So good afternoon, folks. Welcome to I'm Calling HR. This is our second episode, August 11th, 2020. We're presented here by Employernomics and the PEO Matchmaker, who were provided the equipment to do all this. If you want to get a hold of us, this is our info. We can email us, use the website contact form. You can always call us at that number. Please send us questions, suggestions, interesting topics. And if you would like to be on the show as a guest or possibly even a co-host, by all means, say so in the contact. Our sponsors, and one of them is here today, of course, Employernomics and the Matchmaker, and Jennifer Carraway with Carraway HR, who is our featured guest today. So I'm going to put up, she's got all these letters off her name, which I want to explain, and then she's going to tell you a little bit about her experience in just a second after I introduce her. But we met sort of after she left the PEO, but we'd heard of each other. So we probably want to get into that story too. So these are the things we're going to be talking about that you've asked us to talk about, but I'm sure we're going to come up with other topics. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop sharing the screen and go to just the two of us so people can see, how well you've dressed today, for example, because I'm really impressed because it's much better than the jeans and t-shirt we usually do at Dunkin' Donuts. Is that okay?
That is okay. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right. If you need me to go back to that screen at any time, just say, hey, pop that screen up. I can do it. So tell us about how you got to where you are today. I mean, give us the 3-minute story.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I really believe in building relationships. I really love people. I love diversity, and I love to help with the messaging between employer and employees, because I often find that everyone has the same objective and the same goal in mind, but they don't always know how to energize and get the synergy going amongst their team. So I realized I had somewhat of a gift in the area of communication at a young age and discovered this industry. So I had attended University of Florida. I got my degree in human resources development. Then I went on with my first real professional job at the Orlando Magic. I had been hired on as an HR intern, and then I went in to be an HR assistant, and at that time we did not have an HR director. So that was some really great exposure and experience there. And working there, the lockout had kicked in. And from that, I was introduced to my previous employer in the PEO industry by her brother. She had just started this company, about a year in business. Her brother had made introductions, and she had hired me, and I had worked for my previous employer for about 19 years, I think it was. And through the PEO experience, I gained a wealth of knowledge, because obviously you're working with the interworkings of multiple companies. And that is how I kind of got my footing to go out on my own and then become an HR consultant, because I love HR. I think it's great. And there's so many different facets.
There's a lot of things I'm going to ask you about there. I took a few notes. So the first thing is, I think you told me once before you worked for the Magic, but my memory was the second thing to go. So what did you do for the Magic?
So I had beat out probably 350 plus applicants in order to get an internship. That's always my suggestion. The best way to get your foot in the door is through an internship. And I did an internship in the HR department. I also did an internship at Shands Hospital in the HR department up in Gainesville. And then the internship finished, and I was provided an opportunity to be an HR assistant. And that's when the lockout had kicked in. So when the lockout kicks in, they start cutting from the bottom. And that's when I was able to look at other opportunities and was provided a great opportunity to work with a new PEO owner.
Lockout. What lockout was that?
Sure. I didn't want to age myself, but there was a time in the NBA where all the players were on strike. So during that time frame was when I had made a switch, because they were going to be cutting from the bottom. So they were going to cut the support staff and the internship and the admin, because the directors and those particular positions are last ones to be cut.
I think I remember when that was, and out of respect for you, I won't mention which century that was.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the other thing you said is, okay, so you went to director and then somebody's brother introduced you to a PEO?
Yes. So my former employer, her brother had introduced me to her, and she had had her PEO for about a year here locally. And that PEO is Professional Employer Resources in Maitland. Great company, female owned and operated. Shout out to them. They have been an amazing part of my success story. So it was her brother that had asked me to speak to his sister, Tina Compton, and I did such. And she hired me, and I worked my way up, and we were moving and grooving and grew the company to what it is today. And then I went out on my own just in 2018, January.
I think it's interesting that I knew about you. Oh, I've got somebody, my producer, Oscar the cat, wants to get out of the room. Excuse me. So we knew about each other. I knew about PER, of course, and you'd probably heard of my company, but we never talked. And it was very difficult. You guys were hard to get to. There was a wall up there. Were you responsible for that wall? Was that your job?
Yes, I would definitely say I was the buffer and responsible for the wall. I feel like Tina and I are very similar in the fact that we really care about relationships and the ones that are established, and we're very loyal. So unless there is something broken, we just weren't of the mindset to take a lot of solicitation calls, if you will. I hate to say that, but it's just, we were busy.
I'm all right. This is for my ego, but I got to ask, knowing what you know now, would I have gotten in?
Well, had we had an already established relationship, I think I would have definitely supported making the introduction for sure.
Right.
And it was certainly nothing to be offended by. It's just not often that we would take cold calls. If there wasn't a referral in or relationship established, we just didn't. That was just kind of our practice.
So in one of our future shows, I'm calling Sales HR. We're going to talk about how to get in. Because that was, I'm sorry that it took us so long to do business together, because we do network together now. We have for the last couple of years. And
I'm not sorry, because everything happens for a reason, John.
Well, okay.
Timing is everything.
There's lightning outside. I don't want to risk anything. You're right. But I wish, now that we have done business, and I realize that you're a great strategic partner. You and I have introduced each other to some great people. We're helping each other do business. We're very proud to say that, Carraway HR is our leading HR consultant partner for Employernomics. And you've helped us bring along some others. I know Milan is coming along pretty well. We're going to have some other people to fill in the cracks that you and I don't handle. And that group we're forming is looking pretty good too. The Ergo, the Employers Resource Group of Orlando, I kind of like the way that's going too. So I'm really excited about how we network together. And people probably don't want to hear about that, but I just want to tell you, I'm excited about it. Right? What I do want to ask about now is these things you put up here is your topic today is communicating with your team and how to improve employee performance. Is that what you get asked to do more than anything else?
I find that a lot of times a prospect, client, a business owner will speak to me about some of their employee related issues. And I would say a lot of the solution to that is having stronger communication with your team, being able to have difficult conversations. Many C-suite leadership managers, they want to avoid any type of negative conversation. They don't want to have it, and they ignore it instead of addressing things as they see coming. And then it becomes more and more difficult to actually have those conversations. And now you have a bigger problem on your hand, which is why I was kind of leading into the value of communicating directly to your team. Anytime that you can address your team with any type of issue or even a positive comment or remark, because often I'm hired to help with some of the negative topics, but if we spend as much time publicly recognizing and praising our team, it's always going to be better received. if there is a performance issue that has to be addressed, if they've also received accolades from you publicly in department meetings, in a written email, sharing any kind of feedback a client might have provided. That exchange makes it certainly a lot easier when there's some performance issues that have to be addressed, because you begin building trust that way. And trust is the key factor in having good rapport with your team.
You know, you said a couple things there that really struck home with me. You didn't say the word, but I'm hearing it. It's you're being proactive. Like, start working with the team before the problems happen. Too often, you and I get called into a situation where it's already gone to hell in a handbasket. Right now, we got to clean up the mess. But if people would call us in beforehand, we could put in those proactive procedures to avoid, you know, the thermonuclear explosion in the kitchen, or which you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes there's a
Correct.
I mean, even with clients I have, they'll call me in too late. Like, I'm calling in and they already can't be in the same room with each other, the employee and the employer. And so I've got to sit there and be the third party. You know, I got the employee in one room, I'm going to talk to him. I got the employer in another room, I'm going to talk to them. And finally, when they calm down enough, I can bring them in and have them both talk to each other. But if they had just said beforehand, this is what you're supposed to do. You know, I'm sure you know this, you know, what does your employee handbook say? What does your job description say? A lot of times you get looks like, what employee handbook? Okay, so I interrupted you. Where did you want to go with that? You were talking about verbal versus written is the next item on here.
Yes. So it's quite common that management and leadership, they do a lot of verbals and kind of an, oh, by the way. So we'll just use attendance. It's a super easy one. So if you have an employee that is consistently absent from work, calling in late, maybe it's always happening on a Monday or a Friday, maybe even after a paid holiday, extending their time away from work, and you consistently verbally remind them and say, oh, by the way, you're late. I really need you to be on time. This is very important. And you never take it to the next step, which would be a written reprimand or written documentation of the meeting and the performance that you would like to be corrected. Not much will change. It's very rare that you'll see corrective action, somebody self-correct from verbal warnings. They are helpful when they're not repetitive. If the unwanted behavior is repetitive, it's time to move from the verbal to written. And so I think you saw the next segment I might have added was a written reprimand versus an email.
Yeah, well, that was my question to you, was what qualifies as written, and does email count?
So if there is an email that has discussion of performance issues, maybe a violation of a policy, something to do with some type of corrective action needed, the email can work and can be helpful. I don't find it to be as effective because, again, we're missing the one-on-one time, the coach and counseling session with the employee to kind of find out, is there any underlying reasons contributing to the unwanted performance? So in the case of attendance, which we're speaking of, is there something that's happening that's causing you to continuously be late? And, you know, then through that collaborative, interactive process, we might identify some factors where we might be able to help provide a solution, or we might realize that this individual didn't know how bad it really was. So I prefer direct communication as opposed to email, because an email is just another way for a lot more miscommunication. There's no tonality. Sometimes salutations don't exist. Those are just further ways to divide the already existing issue.
I agree with you. I mean, sometimes it's good to just have something to hand them. You know, let's sit down, read that. Okay, let's talk about it. Whereas an email can be impersonal.
Correct.
Like, hey, I sent you an email. Oh yeah, I got it. Well, I could say, like, I'm sending you an email, but please come into my office. Let's discuss it. Would that be okay?
Well, I still think it's going to be more advantageous for both the employer and the employee to have an in-person meeting, and then you have your written record to follow up with, because if you speak with them directly about the unwanted behavior you would like to see corrected, then you can introduce the document to say, this is just a record of this conversation, of what's expected, what I need you to do, and I know you can do this. And so if we're introducing the document more of, this is just to explain what meeting took place and that we both acknowledge what's expected moving forward, it's a lot less threatening and it won't put the employee on defense. It can be it will be easier for them to digest.
And the next thing you have is, what if the employee refuses to sign the written warning?
So the main difference between a verbal and a written reprimand or written warning would be that signature. So the document should have a signature line, and we should be asking the employee to sign the document. The signature is really just to say that, yes, they acknowledge the meeting. This was the topic discussed. It doesn't mean that they really agree with it, and there should be room on the document where they could put their feedback or their responses, even if they want to write, I'm never late, this is, hogwash. They should be able to do that. But yes,
but you have the record that the meeting was held.
That's correct.
Right.
And if you have a witness, the witness should not be speaking. They should remain quiet and just observe the process. But back to your original question about if they refuse to sign, it will still show as a properly documented process. And you can put refuse to sign, and then you can initial the date. Now, sometimes I'll ask the employee, will you initial under refuse to sign, as a second opportunity to see if we can obtain some of their, signature. And it's okay if they don't. It's still a valid document. And if you have somebody that is knowledgeable in writing these documents, that it's worded properly, you should be giving them a copy of the document.
That makes great sense. I mean, you're right. What if somebody, like, I don't agree with what you said? Well, will you still sign that you heard it and you don't agree with it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways. You can do that, or you can write the words refuse to sign and then ask if they'll initial that. And still, if they won't do anything, they don't want to sign anything, it is okay. Because the main purpose of this entire process is to improve the performance. So hopefully that interactive meeting you had might have gotten them re-engaged, let them air out some of their grievances if they had any, and realize that things are getting a little bit more serious and they cut it out. I mean, that's the bottom line. I always believe in, it's going to be a lot more advantageous if we try to get them re-energized and engaged with the company instead of working on getting rid of them.
Well, I imagine that you run into both a lot. In fact, I'm thinking of one right now, and if I can tell like a 30-second story, this leads into our next one, which is the proper way to introduce written reprimands. Is I had an employee that wasn't performing, and I was getting ready to fire her, and I happened to be on the phone with the owner of the PEO I was with. He says, no, you don't do that. I fire her. And I learned about HR from this guy. I said, well, wait, what do I do? He goes, well, you say she's not performing. Give me 10 things you want her to do by this time next week. And that was, and he says, don't make them too hard, but give her 10 things you want done by next week. So I gave him a list. I emailed it down to him. He called her up, or somebody from the office called her up and said, listen, we're concerned about your performance. Do you think you could have these 10 tasks done by next week? And she said, sure, I can get them all done. So a week later, they called up. They went through the list. She'd done one of them, like the easy one. And they said, well, you have failed to perform these other 9 tasks. What should we do with you? And she said, well, I don't know, maybe I'm in the wrong place. Maybe I don't belong in this job. And they said, well, if you would like to resign, we could give you your 2 weeks notice as vacation. So you could leave tomorrow if you'd like. And I was listening. I was on the other side of the room. I could hear all this going on. And she said, you know what, let's do that. Why don't I resign, and I'll have tomorrow be my last day, and I'll go. And it turned out she already had another job lined up anyway. So the next day we had a party, a going away party for her, and everybody's friendly. We're still friends. So that was easy. But see, that's when I learned that there is a proper way to introduce the documents. So I hope that tees you up, or does it take you off in a totally different direction?
No, I think you're exactly right. How you treat the people, how respectful you are, how genuine you are during that whole meeting, and the words you choose to use so that it's not a scary experience. You can have the
I wouldn't have done it that way. I learned the right way to do it. I'd have done it the wrong way for sure.
Yeah, I think, well, it sounds like you had a good teacher.
Oh, one of those people like you that with those cool letters after their name, which I'm looking at getting myself too. We talked about that.
Yes. Yes.
So going back to that, the proper way to introduce written reprimands in an employee coaching session is
to just identify that the purpose of these documents is that it's a written record of what we've spoken about in this meeting. And hopefully the written record is going to include maybe the policy relation is expected, what they're doing that we don't want them to do, and then allow for any comments and hopefully some encouraging words in that meeting. It's very important because people appreciate working for those that they like and that they can believe in them, because sometimes the poor performance they might not have seen as being a big deal until after you had that meeting with them, and they can self-correct very easily, hopefully.
So that leads up to the next line you have is, what happens if the employee is still upset or not happy after the meeting? What do you do?
So if you feel like you've had a pretty impactful meeting and there might be tears and your employee is visibly upset, something like that, be gracious and see if you might let them go have a break or go walk around the office or sit in their car or take some time so that they're not on the floor or around customers to gather themselves and see where they're at that point. And if you need to, don't be opposed to seeing if you could let them go for just the rest of the day if they need to. Just communicate and try to come up with a win-win, because there's nothing worse than having a visually upset team member, and now you're forcing them to go back on the floor or in the workplace. They're interacting with your clients. They might not be in the best frame of mind. It's just not always good. So I think if you show empathy and you try to work with them to see what might work so everyone can be on the same page, try that method. Another method would be if you find that they're very angry and disgruntled from that meeting and now they want to go out and show that type of behavior in the workplace, and there is nothing that says that you can't bring them back in and have a different type of conversation. So just know
is that the come to Jesus meeting? Yes.
Well, I think that the purpose is you don't have to let the employee carry on any kind of which way they want around the other employees, lowering morale, impacting clients or sales or whatever the case may be. So just don't be afraid to keep on with the communication until you get some results that you can live with. I apologize for the form.
I think you've answered the next one, is what if they don't agree with the counseling session, but is there anything you want to catch up on that?
So if they don't agree with the counseling session, there has been a couple of times in my career that I really tried to listen. Why are you not seeing what I'm seeing? Or what is your perception of the same issue at hand? Listen to see if there's some aspect that you didn't catch. For example, maybe the person that's performing lower than expected, you learned through that counseling session that it's really their colleague who's not doing their work, which is impacting this person's work. So make sure that you're listening to every aspect that touches the performance issue. Do not be afraid or reluctant to possibly change the document to maybe only address the piece that individual's responsible for and remove the other piece. I have, and I will, and I do make changes, whether it's in a performance review or a counseling session, if there's one bit of information that I might not have had prior to that meeting. So I think that is another way to add the human element to the entire experience, that human factor, that we make mistakes and that we can make changes instead of just it's my way or the highway. That's never a good management style. Dictatorships don't work.
So, yeah, I think then that's all. If you don't agree with the counseling, I like what you said there is that active listening. Make sure and I would even ask them, do you feel you've been heard? Have you given us all the side of the story? Is there anything else you want to share that you feel you didn't have an opportunity to share? Please, that's relevant. Don't tell us the manager picks his nose or something like that. Well, unless it's relevant. And then the last one, I think I'm pretty sure what you're going to say here, but I'll ask you, do you provide them a copy of the written warning?
You should be providing a copy of any document that they have signed. Make sure that your employment lawyer or your HR practitioner, someone that has experience in how the verbiage should be written, has written out that document. Because, and I'm not going to go into this too much, but if the document's not written the right way and that document is now in their hands and you are faced with some potential litigation down the road, they have that document to show maybe error of how you worded things, how you discuss things. So just make sure that you have another set of eyes and ears of someone that has experience in that area to review the verbiage and that the written reprimand is written correctly. But yes, it is perfectly fine to provide a copy. And I think it's a good idea because it kind of provides framework for that individual of what they need to do, what the time frame is to improve upon, and hopefully you'll get a lot better results.
Is it required?
No, it is not required. It's not required to give them a copy. It's not even required to do this whole process. In the state of Florida, I'm speaking for the state of Florida, it's at will, and you have a lot more freedoms here than you would if you're an employer in California.
Well, I'm thinking of a very uncomfortable situation when you're sitting here writing down, we're writing down on a piece of paper and then we hand it over to them and they sign it and you take it and you put it away and they say, well, I'd like a copy of that. It would be I think that would be very difficult to say, well, no, you don't get a copy. I wouldn't advise that, right?
It wouldn't, it is not unlawful, but it's unethical and it's not good HR business practice.
Right. It's not going to lead to, peace in the workplace for sure.
No, I agree.
So what we're talking about here now, Jennifer, again, this is more what you and I usually see is we come in after the fact and now it's time to fix the mess. And what you've been talking about for the last 5 minutes or so is basically fixing a mess. Now but you also have said frequently, and I've heard you say this, that if you put the procedures in place beforehand, you won't have this mess.
Correct.
So we don't have this scripted, so I'm going into a different place here. But I have found that when you sit down with somebody that's looking at, or they are hiring, they're either looking at hiring or they are hiring, I tell them, do you have a specific job description? Are you going to offer them and offer a letter which tells them what they're expected to do? And I know that you have probably written some of those, right? Or helped people write them?
Yes, I do. I have experience in writing job offer letters, job descriptions. I have reviewed plenty of employment contracts. I don't agree with contracts. It depends on the industry, but you should have a job offer letter as opposed to an employee contract. And you can call me if you don't know what the difference is. I can help you. But yes, if you have these onboarding processes, procedures in place with a format, it's going to be a smoother process for you. And it's going to build trust because the employee sees what they're getting. There's not any surprises. And then you also have a foundation of what you can keep the employee accountable for. You've probably heard my Hard Rock story, the hostess at the Hard Rock Cafe over in Brandon. I don't know if I have.
I'll refresh your memory. This was more than 10 years ago. The Hard Rock Brandon had hired, they were not with a PEO at this time. They had hired a hostess just to stand out front in the pretty outfit, because that brings people into the casino. They like to see, where I'm going. That's the job description, although it wasn't written down or anything. And this young lady came into the office and said, I am being harassed. And they said, which employee? Oh, it's not employees, it's customers. They're like wolf whistling at me or telling me I look hot. Ooh, nice costume and things like this. And the guy kind of looked at her and said well, that's sort of why you were hired. You know, you're supposed to look attractive. Just, well, I don't want them wolf whistling at me or making comments. So they put up a sign that said, please do not make comments about the hostess's appearance, which, as you can imagine, with guys that go into a casino, had exactly the opposite effect. What, we're not supposed to tell you you're good looking or something? And she got a lawyer, you know, one of the guys off the billboards, I imagine, and sued them. And this went on for 4 or 5 years. They couldn't terminate her because it would just add up the amount of money they would owe her.
It'd be retaliation.
Right. So they finally settled for some middle six-figure number. It wasn't disclosed, although I've heard anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000. So, but I understand that the very next day, they contacted a broker friend of mine, and they said, get us with a PEO ASAP. And the first thing we want is job descriptions, offer letters, and employee handbook. And they put all that in the employee handbook. And now, at least, you know, now it turns out that this girl she had a history of doing stuff like this. You know, she was a pro working the system. But even so, now they were with a PEO that put in the offer letter for them, put in the procedures, and now everybody who's hired in the position is, you know, they know what they're expected to do. They're expected to wear the outfit. They're expected to accept compliments gracefully and not to, you know, to have thick skin, I guess. So, and if they are not comfortable with that, then don't accept the job. And that's all legal, right?
Well, I'm not providing legal advice, so I can't speak
You're
about
right.
that. You'll have to talk to your employment lawyer for that. I can only give you my opinion on that situation. I would just say that the more you disclose at the time of hire through the onboarding applicant recruiting process about the work environment, what to expect, what is it like, I think you'll have a better fit. I do know that unlawful sexual or non-sexual harassment is never going to be condoned. So even if someone heard everything, gets into that casino environment, they do feel that their rights have been violated by an individual in the casino, they still have a right to feel safe and protected and can bring that to their employer's attention. And the employer needs to now talk to that customer. So I think there is a
there was way more than one customer.
I know in that example,
Yeah.
I think you're providing an example that doesn't have a clear solution, but I love to be challenged.
Yes.
I'm just saying that you still have to do your due diligence to do everything you can to make sure that that employee is free and clear from non-sexual and sexual harassment of any kind.
Well, as you can guess, I mean, 99.99% of the girls who take that job have no problem with it. And this one, you know, she found a loophole. Really, there was no, which it showed. What it showed me is that you can't make assumptions. You have to let your employees know what is expected of them and what is not expected of them. And the more you let them know, like, be proactive, communicate with them. This is what we expect of you. This is what we don't expect of you. I wasn't going to go here, but it just occurred to me. You've probably helped companies with social media policies, haven't you?
I have.
So we are allowed to tell our employees what we expect of their behavior on social media, especially when they're at work. Right? We are allowed to. Well, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I know you're not a lawyer, but
go down that road in this time frame, especially with what's going on in the world.
We'll save that one for the next one. Okay.
Maybe.
All right. Yeah, that's it. That would be. You're right. We could do a whole show on that, on social media. And we're a good half hour or so in. We can call it if you want. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners before I give them your website and tell them how to contact you?
I will say thank you so much for having me as a guest. And John, I've really, really valued your friendship and your networking ability. You know a lot of people, I know a lot of people, and we're very customer driven focused. And I've enjoyed that in working with you. So I appreciate that very much. I've met some great people from you.
The older I get, it's actually the more people that know me. because I've kind of forgotten, it doesn't that happen to you? I'll be somewhere and someone will walk up to me and start talking to me and go like, oh, I know this guy, but I cannot remember who it is.
That does happen to me, but I keep smiling until it registers because I would never want to offend someone that was showing me warmth and just being social and providing grace. I would hate to offend them. So
Well, you got 20, 30 years yet, but once you have as much gray hair as I do, you can just stop and go, look, excuse me. I'm old. My memory was gone. The second thing to go, who are you? So here is your, where they can get a hold of you. And like I said, you've got, what was it you called it? You have an.
So on my website, there's like an intake form. If you wanted to reach out, send me any questions, send me your information. My phone number is on there as well, and a little bit more about my background. And I provide all kind of customizable services. I can provide just help with the handbook, reviewing forms, and HR strategy sessions. So there's a variety of different ways that I can partner with companies. And it's always smart to have some HR assistance while you're growing your company instead of reacting to an issue where you're like, I really need HR. Because if you proactively engage and have some HR best practices structure, it just minimizes a lot of future headaches for you and costly mistakes.
I agree with that totally. The phrase an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure certainly applies in HR.
Very much.
And everybody that I have introduced to you has thanked me for doing so, saying that, wow, she saved us not only a lot of headaches and a lot of time, but we think she ended up saving us money in the long run. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
So this is our say goodbye screen that the attorneys want us to put up here. Now I'm just going to read it. Thank you for joining us. This show is for educational purposes. Neither Jennifer or I are attorneys yet. Okay. We'll see what happens. But we're not providing legal advice. We're simply sharing the stories and the possible HR best practices that we've experienced throughout our careers. And, I think we're wrong once in a while. I can't remember the last time, but we may be wrong. So we recommend you contact your attorney before making any changes to your HR policies. Does that sound right?
That sounds perfect. I like it.
All right. That's great. So thank you for being here. You are an excellent guest, as I knew you would be.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope you can come on like once a month as a co-host. We'd really like to have you.
Well, thanks. I will be back. I appreciate it so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thanks, audience, for watching.
Oh, you and I have so many topics that we could go on and on about. I mean, if they knew how much we just said, like, no, we'll save that one for another one. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Okay, folks, we'll tune in next week. Actually, I don't know who our guest will be next week. I think it's going to be Doug Foreman with Fringe Benefit Plans, but he hasn't confirmed yet. So pay attention to our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page. We'll be announcing who our guest is. Jennifer, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on Facebook, we're ending you right now. For those of you on YouTube, you're going to see us a little while longer. Okay. Now I got to figure out how to stop recording. There we go.